Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Hi, we're the Nerdy Thirties. I'm Erin. This is.
I'm Travis.
And we are here with Kyl
Cobb.
I like that we said it together. That was awesome. So Kyl Cobb is a demonologist, and what exactly is a demonologist for those who don't know?
Well, unlike the guys on television, I actually study demons. So I've gone back and worked on the study of demons from ancient Mesopotamia forward, and going both in the eastern and western direction. And so part of what I literally do is I go back and look at demon lore stories or famous demonic cases and research the truth behind what those cases actually are. So it's cases like the famous one of The Exorcist is a good example. I've gone back and I've read the priest's diaries, and I've gone back and looked at the actual guy's history and tracked him down. The guy who's behind The Exorcist, by the way, is the guy who invented the foam spray for NASA, and he helped the space program. So, you know, that's the kind of thing I do.
I had no idea.
And when it comes to more typical cases, I field calls from all over the world, 24 hours a day, where someone's got what they think is a demonic case, and I'll kind of vet it and see whether it's legitimate or just a haunting, or more often than not, they need serious counseling and help. Then I try to either refer someone in their area to them to help them, or if it's a more extreme case, I'll fly or drive, whatever, to help them firsthand. And I even work with clergy all the time that make mistakes in cases, and I'm just there as a resource to help people.
So you say that you fact check these things a lot. Like, have you ever been consulted by people that make movies about these things? Yeah. What?
I've had several offers to act as executive producer and consultants on some cases, but usually I turn it down. And the reason is I'm a professional, and usually I tell people if they know who I am, they've made a serious mistake in their life. So it's one of those things that as a professional, I don't want it to be cheesed up. I don't want the truth to be distorted by an editor who wants to present a certain storyline. And I know a lot of the folks who are on television shows, and they'll tell you they may have been, straight up, what their investigation was may have been legit, but by the time it's been edited and reproduced, it's something totally different. And that's not my world.
What show have you seen that actually is the most authentic?
I'm hearing crickets.
That means
Nothing.
The first 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters had that, I think. Over time, I think it kind of lost some of that. I can say, without remorse, certain TV hosts that get possessed every week, that isn't quite real.
Yeah, I know exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I'm not going to name names.
Yeah, I won't name names either, but I have a few ideas.
I got a feeling.
So something that was really fascinating to me about you is you've studied 22 different religions, and you've actually been honored guests at different shamanic rituals and all that. How did all those things come about?
Well, I've spent my life traveling the world. I've done 59 different countries, and I'm just one of those guys who I love to learn. I love to explore. And a good example, I spent a lot of time going back and forth to Mexico City and going to the different Mayan ruins around there. And as part of that, I got to know some of the actual descendants of the Mayans that live there. And they do something called the sun death ritual during the solstice, during December. And because I'd gotten to know them, they're like, Kyl, well, you can come and participate with us. And so at sunset, the prior day to the solstice, they start making this altar out of flowers and fruit. And it's really concentric demon summoning circles. And they're beautiful, though. They have artwork from the flowers inside. And what they do is they have a volunteer who volunteers to allow the demon to come into him and become the jaguar. And he, just a normal guy, then spends the next 12 hours, sunrise to sunset, never stopping, doing the most incredible physical activities you've ever seen. And when people go into the altar as part of the different ritual, the shaman will do ritual cleansings on them, kind of a smudging type thing. And then at the end, when the sun sets, they go and the shaman releases the spirit, or it's actually technically a jamin. The jamin will relieve the spirits, and that guy just turns into a puddle. He can't walk, he can't talk.
He's Max situation where it was an actual puddle.
It is almost that bad. I mean, it's to the point where I'm like, my God, did he just die on us?
Oh my God.
And that's part of it.
Exhausted with all the physical activity they were just doing that they normally cannot do.
And it makes an Olympic athlete look like a hack from elementary school. I mean, I've never seen any.
Do you think any Olympic athletes are possessed?
Tanya Harding comes to mind, but
Yeah, but she still couldn't win, right?
And she got kneed, so we'll give her a pass. So something that I've always thought was really interesting is in a lot of different cultures, they actually believe that mental illnesses are attachments of spirits. Do you find that to be true?
I think it's just the opposite. Mental illness causes symptoms that seem to be possessions, and so, yeah. So I think that's the issue. It's particularly as we don't understand or haven't understood the mind as well as we do today, that the whole mental illness thing has been kind of pseudoscience. And so as a result, whenever someone's acting a little strange or it's not that they're mentally challenged, it's that there's a demon possessing them. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church for a long time kind of fostered that idea. And even today, that's one of the problems. After they went to a more science approach, the current Pope has kind of shifted that back to where everything can be a demonic.
What is your take on sleep paralysis? This is something that everybody has talked about, and I really want to know from a demonologist point of view, what is it?
All right. The idea of sleep paralysis is everybody, when we go to sleep, our body releases a hormone, and the hormone acts to kind of immobilize us so we don't act out our dreams. Well, for people who have chemical imbalances, what basically happens is the wake-up command fires before basically the hormone to counteract the paralysis. And so for that brief 2 or 3 seconds, your mind is fired up. These chemicals are rushing through it. So first of all, it causes delusions. And that's where you get the idea of, I see shadow people, I see demons. But the other effect is, as the body turns on, particularly in women, it gives them orgasms, and that's the sex simulation that they experience.
So it's not a succubus or an incubus?
No. And the funny thing is, that legend actually goes all the way back to a Mesopotamian demon called Alilu. And that's when we first have the association between a demon and sleep paralysis occurring, and that eventually then gets confused with the Lilith mythology because of a bad translation. And so that's where it all comes from. That's why people think demons are sleeping with them.
So cool. We just debunked sleep paralysis with the demonologist. So
I'm going to take his word. So what can you tell us about Lilith? A lot of people say that Lilith was actually the first vampire. Do you believe that to be true?
Well, the story of Lilith is actually a little more complex. It goes back to the fact that under the Jewish tradition, the Jews weren't always monotheistic. There were multiple tribes. Some of them were polytheistic, and some of them were mono. Some worshipped Yahweh as a single god, or Eloi, which is a plural sets of gods. And what happened in that particular case, when they wrote the book Genesis, it was combined from a lot of the Jewish sects. And so the Eloi followers and the Yahweh followers, one of them had man and woman created with the dust of the earth. The other has Eve being created by the rib of Adam. So that's why in the Genesis there are two versions of the origin story. Well, so the idea is the first wife then, it's a rabbinical text, was Lilith. Now the problem was there was already something called Alilu, which is a type of demon, which is a succubus incubus prototype. And it's spelled very similar to what Lilith would become. It's also the old Hebrew word for owl. And so when they were translating it, that's why the word Lilith appears.
That's why it's nocturnal.
Well, that's why Lilith appears in the Bible once. It's because when they were translating it, they took the owl and translated it as Lilith. And so that's the kind of crossover where Lilith went into rabbinical text, and then a mistranslation makes her more of a figure. And so the whole vampire thing, that's a modern creation. That's something that somebody, probably the 60s or 70s, said, hey, there's this cool demon. And she's not really a demon per se, but the reason if you believe the Lilith legend, she's immortal because she was thrown out of the Garden of Eden for not sleeping with Adam, not submitting, laying beneath him. And she was thrown out before...
She was the original feminist.
She was thrown out before death entered, right? So as a result, she's immortal. But
I'm fascinated.
See, we were really excited to talk to you because, like, when we were looking through the program, we were like, I want to go through all his panels. Because they were so cool.
And we're going to.
We are. We're going to make an attempt
Okay,
to.
and this is going to be our last question because we got to let him get back to his booth. Where do you think the origin of demons come from? Not like the mythology of demons, but the actual demon itself.
You know, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
One of the things I usually remind people, from a conservative estimate, human beings have only been able to speak the way we speak for about 300,000 years. Our oldest translatable, discernible writing is only about 6,000 years old. There's 290,000 years of our history missing. So, you know, personally, I believe that they've always been here.
Yeah.
They're just like we are. They're older and probably more intelligent, and we're lower on the food chain.
Yeah.
And so that's what I believe. And I think part of why we don't see them walking around and things, the way our human eyes work, most of the population, we're trichronal, which we see red, blue, and green. There's 1% of the population, mostly women, that are tetrachronal. They see red, blue, green, and infrared. But what that means is that, for instance, when they look at your Superman shirt, it's not just black, it's thousands of different shades of black to someone that's tetrachronal. They can see what basically to us as trichronal is invisible. And so someone could be standing right there and we see by reflected light, right? So if you absorb everything but one of the infrared, let's say, it hits you, it bounces back. I can't see it because it's out of my wavelength, but my mind, because of the way our minds have adapted, we filter it out. So I would still see that column standing behind you, for instance, because my mind's gonna paint the rest of that picture. It's kind of like a version of Matrixing.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And the interesting thing is the military's actually developing that technology as part of you've seen some of the little articles about the kind of for field use, the cloaking technology that they've been testing. Same idea. It basically wraps.
Soon.
So that's what the evidence. And even the Eastern cultures, if you look at their illustrations of demons, the Gruel de Zul is a good one. They always draw it as a person riding the possessed back.
That is so cool. This has been the most interesting interview I think we've ever had.
Of our entire stay here. So
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Kyl, for taking the time to talk to us. Where can people find your books and everything?
I'm on Amazon. I'm in Barnes and Nobles. So those are the two big places.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So go look up Kyl Cobb if you found this interesting because he's super cool. Seriously, find his stuff. Bye, guys.